Welcome to the Savvy Podcasting for Entrepreneurs podcast, a place for podcasters to learn what's actually working in the world of podcasting and how to use their podcast to generate consistent leads in their business. I'm your host, Jenny, and I'm so excited you're here. Hey, Savvies, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm so excited that you're here, and I cannot wait to jump into today's episode. So in today's episode, we're chatting all about spring cleaning your podcast process. Now, I know we're well into spring and actually almost to summer, but hey, sometimes we do things a little unconventionally around here. So let's dive in. All right. So number one, you want to streamline any processes that aren't currently the most efficient. So over here at Savvy Podcast Agency, which is my company, we are all about efficiency. So I like to take a look at my own and my clients' podcast processes about 1 to 2 times a year, usually in the spring. And then again, like at the end of the year before it wraps up, and just do an audit to make sure that the process still works and it works well. So it's not about if the process still works, because it typically does, but is it the most efficient process it can be? Is there a better way to do something? So if there's a better way to do something, I want to be doing it that way. So this helps me make improvements and really just tighten up our process so that we're not wasting a bunch of time doing things how we've always done when there's a better way that it can be done. So big fan of streamlining. So number 2, you want to figure out a batching schedule for not only your recording, but also editing, show notes, etc. And in my opinion, batching is really key to success with your podcast and not getting completely burnt out by the process. I found that when people don't batch, they're more likely to get burnt out and quit. Whereas when you batch, you have more brain space to focus on other things and you feel like you're not doing the podcast 24/7. So batching is really meant to make you feel less overwhelmed, but sometimes it does the exact opposite at first, since most people, once they decide to start batching, they try to batch all the things instead of just taking it one step at a time. So I first recommend starting batching your recording, record for the month in one sitting. And then once you're doing that consistently, like maybe 2 or 3 months in a row, you've been able to batch the recordings out, then you can select another podcast task to batch, whether that's like editing all your episodes in one sitting or doing show notes or graphics or whatever. But yeah, and just so on and so on. So keep adding on to that. So it's not like super overwhelming, but you're still adding on to it as you get more acquainted with batching. And this really just makes everything much more manageable, especially when you don't have a team to help you, because you're getting stuff done in advance and you're not waiting until the last minute and flying by the seat of your pants and trying to get it done at 11 p.m. the day before it goes live, because that's no fun. So number 3, you want to go back and optimize your episodes for SEO. So your old episodes, obviously, both within your host, so within your podcast host, Libsyn, Buzzsprout, whatever you use, and also on your website. Now, this one is not going to be something you can do in 20 minutes. It'll take a while. Just keep that in mind, but it's so worth it, since I know most of us haven't been optimizing our episodes for SEO since the beginning. We usually learn about it later down the line, or you don't think about it until later down the line. But really optimizing one old episode per week is super duper doable, and it will benefit you so much in the long run. I promise. Don't feel like you need to do them all at once. I know for me, I have 230 something episodes. So obviously that would be silly to try and optimize them all in 1 week, or even a day or week, a month. So just try to do 1 or 2 a week. And if you can enlist help with this, that would be even better. But if not, if you're doing it yourself, shoot for 1 or 2 a week. And yeah, and then going forward, obviously you're going to optimize them for SEO. So it just makes it manageable, doable, and it's just going to be really beneficial. So make sure to go and do that. Although it's not a task we all love to do, it's necessary. And then lastly, you can go and write outlines for your next few episodes. So if you haven't mastered batching all parts of your podcast process yet, then I highly recommend just writing your outlines in advance at the very least, so that when you're ready to record, you can just get on the mic and go for it instead of having to stop and write your outline, which usually results in loss of momentum and sometimes even complete loss of interest to where you don't even feel like recording anymore. So having those outlines ready to go when that like inspiration strikes and you're like, oh, I need to hop on the mic. You already have that basis there ready for you. So it doesn't feel like a chore because you've already done like the hard part essentially. Now you just have to show up and record. So yeah, those are my 4 tips for spring cleaning your podcast process. I'd love to hear from you about your podcast process. Have you spring cleaned it? Have you revamped it recently? I'd love to hear from you. Let me know on our Instagram, which is Podcasting for Entrepreneurs. Shoot me a DM. I'd love to chat with you. And that is it for today's episode. So if you want to check out the show notes, you can go to savvypodcastingforentrepreneurs.com. And I'll see you in the next episode.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher, and leave a review. You can find us at savvypodcastingforentrepreneurs.com and on Facebook at Savvy Podcasting for Entrepreneurs and Instagram at Savvy Podcasting. Make sure to join our free Facebook community for podcasters by going to savvypodcastingforentrepreneurs.com/community and join in on the exclusive community just for Savvy Podcasting for Entrepreneurs listeners. I'll see you there.